last night was one of the greatest basketball games I've ever seen from Montclair State, from Karen Harvey, and that's a true testament to who Coach Karen Harvey is. If you don't know who she is, she has been able to find new ways to win with a new group of people every single year. So congratulations to Karen Harvey and the 2018 Women's Basketball New Jersey Athletic Conference champion, Montclair State Red Hawks. And last night, and we'll get to the game a little bit later, but it would be wrong of me to not mention the broadcast crew on WMSC for just a couple of minutes. It would be wrong for me not to open the show with that, because last night was, without question, one of our greatest performances of all time. And it doesn't just start with me. I mean, there was a picture tweeted on the WMSC Sports account. That broadcast wouldn't have been nothing, let alone the studio work, which I'll get to in a second. That broadcast would have been nothing without the three guys to my left. And I say that about them for not even just last night, but for the last 4 years of WMSC Sports. Like, this team would have been nothing without Sam Fletcher, Sean Martin, and Nick Flaherty, who put on one hell of a performance last night. You know, it's days like this, and I know Sam Fletcher and Tyler Monahan, who are the other two sports directors of WMSC, can agree with me on this. It was nights like last night that make you proud to be a director. And all of the stress leading into the game and all the stress all year and dealing with certain things and dealing with certain people and all of that culminates to one night. And for those of you who don't believe how big last night was to us, for those of you who don't believe that it wasn't just a regular broadcast, I'll start with this. The 2018 NJAC Championship was staffed in July with the four seniors and myself, Sam Fletcher, Nick Flaherty, and Sean Martin. We were staffed to be at the Panzer Athletic Center last night in the middle of July. That is how big this broadcast is to us every single year, because Karen Harvey has created a legacy with Montclair State women's basketball to a point where they're expected to be in this title game every single year. And we expected them in July to be in this title game, so we had that game staffed in July. We knew on that night we were planning what broadcast we were going to do, and we got to the NJAC Championship, and I said, we might as well just staff this right now because we know who's going to be on site. And we had a pretty good idea who would be in studio, and we pretty much got it right with Tyler, Vito, and Anthony, who we'll get to later. But that is how big the NJAC Championship broadcast is to this team, is the fact that it was staffed in the middle of July, and we finally did it last night on February 23rd. That's number one. Number two, the minute the NJAC Championship was official and that Montclair State was going to be playing in it, myself, Sam Fletcher, and Tyler Monahan were creating promos, imaging, all that, just to get ourselves ready for what is always our biggest broadcast of the year. The guys get on me for this all the time, but I put myself under so much pressure. NJAC Championship week, the moment I know that they're in it, and I would have been the same way with the men's team if they had won Wednesday night against Ramapo. I put so much pressure on myself to make sure that it is the best broadcast of the year. I'm in charge of creating the imaging. If they say it's not necessary, I do it anyway because it makes the broadcast sound better. I'm constantly pacing back and forth at the Panzer Athletic Center waiting to go on the air. I'm looking around to see what specific interviews we can get post-game. I'm never relaxed at the NJAC Championship, and you can ask Sam, you can ask Sean, and you can ask Nick, and they will tell you that that's true. And number three, start to finish, best performances of the year every single time, and specifically last night. And again, I can go on, but it would be wrong of me to not mention and to thank the broadcast crew of last night. And that starts, number one, with the play-by-play crew and Nick Flaherty and Sean Martin. And I tell these two all the time how much they're valued and how much their play-by-play skills are valued with this team and how much it's going to be missed next year. Last night was one of their best performances ever. The good game helped. Nick Flaherty and Sean Martin have this way of themselves. First of all, the two know each other so well. Nick knows when it's time to bring Sean in. Sean knows when it's time to stop talking and let Nick get back to the action. They know each other like a book. It's incredible. They are the very best of WMSC Sports when it comes to play-by-play action. There is nobody that can touch them. And those two went out there last night in their very last NJAC Championship broadcast and put on a clinic. That was incredible to listen to. It was incredible to be a part of. I was honored to help them produce the broadcast. I was honored to be alongside them last night. And start to finish, Sean and Nick, phenomenal performance last night, as I expected. But it still goes without saying thank you for one hell of a job last night. For those of you who have seen the picture already, the guy right to my left, Sam Fletcher, last night produced his best game of all time. My job last night was to engineer the broadcast, to live tweet, shoot video, and make sure we got the interviews that we wanted. Sam Fletcher was finding all the live stats, getting the stats to Nick and Sean at the most opportune times. I've never seen somebody produce a game like Sam Flesher did last night. And that just goes without saying how much of a leader he has become with WMSC Sports and how much he has grown within the department from being my assistant to now taking the reins as sports director, allowing me to take a step back as senior sports director to kind of just watch it unfold. I have been extremely impressed with Sam Flesher's performance all year, and even more impressed with the way he handled the game last night. He knew immediately what had to be done every single moment of the game. The minute the game was over, he was sending me places. He knew immediately what he wanted. It was his broadcast to run, and he ran it beautifully. And for that, Sam, I say thank you. And of course, our studio crew, but I need to start with our associate producer last night, our board operator, Tyler Monahan. The next in line to take over WMSC Sports when it's time for Sam and I to depart at the end of the year. His biggest broadcast, no doubt, because this was the first time he was going to run the board for this broadcast. And I always tell my guys that running the board for the NJAC Championship is the hardest broadcast you will ever board up for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's a lot of imaging to be played. Last night, we had a promo, we had an intro, and we had a bunch of sweepers that needed to be played in the broadcast to make it sound good. He did that. He had to be on his game post-game because we were constantly throwing back and forth to Panzer with interviews. He was, and it was beautiful. And on top of that, he hosted, lead host might I add, one of his best games all year. Start to finish, Tyler Monahan, thank you for a great performance last night. It was something that I totally expected 100%, but sitting back on it this morning and just kind of soaking it all in and realizing that last night went so much better than I ever thought it could have went. Which leads me to my other two studio guys, Anthony Fastigi and Vito Namio, who knew what had to be talked about. They brought the X's and O's without boring anybody into the game. They said all the right things. They knew what stats had to be brought up. They knew what key points had to be brought up every single moment they were on the air, from pregame to halftime and in postgame when they were just commenting on the interviews that we had at Panzer. Phenomenal job by everybody involved. And overall, there's a reason that we call the NJAC Championship broadcast our biggest of the year. That's the night that we're dressed up. That's the night that there's no time for any mistakes. And I looked back last night when I got home. I sat down and immediately realized how proud I was to have been a part of something very special last night. And there was a reason that we had this staff for the game last night, because we knew it was our best. We knew that at the end of the day, when it came down to it, we knew we would get the best product out of everybody involved in the broadcast last night. On the mic or behind the scenes, we knew start to finish that broadcast was going to run smoothly, and that, I can honestly say, and I could take this to my grave, was one of the greatest broadcasts I have ever been a part of. And for that, I say thank you to everybody involved. And we're not done yet, of course. We have NCAAs next week. Of course, the selection show is on Monday. We'll find out what Montclair State's fate is at 2:30 p.m. on Monday. But when it comes to the NJAC Championship, knowing it was the last one I would ever be a part of, knowing it was the last one that Sam Flesher and Nick Flaherty and Sean Martin would ever be a part of, we went out there. We gave it our all, and I can look back and be proud knowing that that was the last NJAC Championship I would ever get to be a part of, and that was honestly the best one I was ever a part of.